So there's a really big change on the horizon for NHS health checks over in England. It's all about tackling a topic that, let's be honest, has been in the shadows for way too long: menopause. And the whole thing kicks off with just one simple question. But, before we get into what's changing, we really need to understand why it matters so much. And to do that, we've got to look at the numbers. They tell the story of what is, for literally millions of women, a silent struggle. I mean, think about it. How is it possible that a totally natural stage of life, something that affects half the population, is so often something people just don't talk about? Well, the stats, they really paint a picture. Okay, first off, let's talk about just how many people this affects. This isn't some small niche issue. We're talking about 3 out of every 4 women experiencing menopause symptoms. That is a massive, massive number. And this isn't something that's over in a flash. The symptoms can stick around for an average of 7 years. Just imagine that, 7 years where your daily life, your work, your whole sense of well-being could be seriously disrupted. And here's the real kicker. Even though we know it's super common and we know it can last for years, less than 1 in 10 women feel like they actually have enough information to deal with it. I mean, that's a huge disconnect, right? A massive gap between what people are going through and the support they're getting. So just so we're all on the same page, what are we talking about here? Menopause is that transition most women go through, usually somewhere between 45 and 55. And the symptoms? They're all over the map. You've got the physical stuff people talk about, like hot flushes and joint pain, but also cognitive things, like brain fog and memory issues. That can be just as tough. Okay, so with all that in mind, the government has stepped in with a new plan to try and tackle this silent struggle. So let's get into it. What's the solution they're proposing? This is the big one. For the very first time, screening for menopause is going to be an official part of NHS health checks in England. This is kicking off in 2026, and honestly, it's a huge deal. A real landmark change for public health. The health secretary, Wes Streeting, he put it pretty plainly. He said, women have been suffering in silence for way too long. And I'm quoting him here. He said, no one should have to grit their teeth and just get on with what can be debilitating symptoms. You can really hear the intent behind that. And to put some numbers on that information gap, the Women's Health Ambassador, Dame Leslie Regan, pointed out that something like 400,000 women in the UK will enter menopause this year alone. And the vast majority of them, they'll have very little idea what's actually happening to them. Okay, so a new screening. Sounds good. But what does that actually mean when you walk into the doctor's office? How is this going to work in the real world? Let's break it down. Right now, it's pretty simple. There is no standard screening for menopause in these health checks. It's just not there. But come 2026, that all changes. It's going to be baked right into the process. So here's what it will look like for you. If you're between 40 and 74, you get an invite for a free health check every 5 years, right? You pop down to your GP or maybe a pharmacy. They do the usual stuff. Check your blood pressure, cholesterol, BMI. But now there's a new step. They're actually going to ask you about menopause symptoms. And the whole point of this, really, is just to start a conversation. It's a simple prompt to identify women who might need some advice, or support, or maybe even treatments like HRT. It's about opening the door so they can get that help if they need it. But of course, no new policy is ever that simple. And experts were really quick to jump in and point out that while this has huge potential, there are also some pretty serious challenges to overcome. So let's look at both sides of the coin. On the one hand, the promise is huge, right? It could break down old barriers, chip away at the stigma, and just get more women the help they need. But on the other hand, the pitfalls are real. People are worried about the fact that not many people even go to these health checks in the first place. Then there's the need for staff training. And a really big one, the risk that this new system could completely miss the marginalized communities who need it most. And this really brings us to what might be the single biggest hurdle. Get this, according to the latest data, less than half of the people who are invited for an NHS health check actually show up. That's a massive problem. If the screening only happens in that appointment, well, you're already missing more than half the people you're trying to reach. Janet Lindsay from the charity Wellbeing of Women really zeroed in on who this affects the most. She pointed out that it's often women and people from marginalized communities who are least likely to even know about these appointments, let alone attend them. And her warning is pretty stark. Progress on menopause support cannot leave them behind. And then there's the training issue. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists brought this up. They're basically saying, look, this is a great idea,
But if the staff doing the checks aren't trained to have these sensitive conversations, it's not going to have the positive impact we all want. It's a really crucial point.
So, okay, we've got some serious challenges. But even with all that, this policy is still being seen as a really big deal. To get why, we kind of have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. When you boil it all down, this is about so much more than just one question in a health check. It's about a fundamental shift in our culture. It's about pulling menopause out from behind closed doors, out of this private struggle, and putting it right where it belongs, as a standard, normal part of public health care. And that leaves us with one final, really big question to think about. This whole thing is built on a simple idea, the power of just asking. But when you think about the real world problems like low tendance and the need for proper training, you have to wonder, is asking one question really enough?